Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting adventure of this day in history. It is May 20th, 2024. Got some interesting stuff for you. Some nations that go independent. We have some notable birthdays. We have an act that passed that was very favorable to citizens. We have some treaties and some other good stuff. So let's just get into it, shall we? So May 20th, right? It's May 20th and we have some birthdays. So the first, 1806, there's a British philosopher and economist by the name of John Stuart Mill. He is born on this day in 1806. In 1908, American actor James Stewart, you might have known him as Jimmy Stewart. He was in A Wonderful Life. He was in a lot of movies in the 50s and 60s especially. He was a World War II bomber pilot. In fact, he is credited to have given Walter Matthau the confidence to actually get into acting. Walter Matthau had asked him, hey, can I ask you a personal question? And he's like, sure. I guess Matthau was a gunner or something. He was one of the crew members on Stewart's bomber. And he says, how do I become an actor like you? And Stewart, to his credit, said, you don't become an actor like me, you become an actor like you be yourself. And so that was probably the best advice that a legend like Jimmy Stewart could have ever given anybody. So that was today's Jimmy Stewart's birthday. He was born in 1908. In 1915, Moshe Dayan, an Israeli statesman, was born on this day. In 1935, Jose Mujica, the president of Uruguay, was born on this day. And American singer, if you can call her that, Cher. She had a few hits that I like, but for the most part, I'm not a big fan of Cher. It is her birthday today. She was born in 1946, which means she's old. I know, I'm an ass. She's a year older than my father, so there we go. So we'll get into this day in history. In 1784, the Netherlands cedes holdings in both India and Indonesia to Britain. It was done at we would call it now like a Paris Accords, but it was called the Peace of Paris, where a bunch of treaties were negotiated, including the conclusion of the American Revolution. Everything was kind of wrapped up at the same time in Paris on this day in 1784. And so it was on this day that the Netherlands had ceded holdings to both India and Indonesia to Britain. So Britain lost the United States colonies, but gained holdings in India and Indonesia. I guess it worked out for them. 1873, Levi Strauss and Jacob Davis, they are granted a patent for the use of copper rivets in trousers. Now, what makes that unique is that it added strength and structural integrity to those trousers. But it also gave birth to the modern day blue jeans. And we have Levi Strauss to thank for that. So, next time you go put on your 501s, just remember that May 20th, 1873 was the day that they were granted their patent to enable them to produce those pair of jeans that you are wearing now. So, yeah, it's stuff there. 1882. I didn't realize this. I didn't realize how far back their roots went. But Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Italy, they sign on a treaty on this day in 1882, and it's called the Triple Alliance. And what it's designed to do was to provide protection to all three countries from other forces in Europe. So, for instance, they all had a secret pact with each other that say, for instance, say Russia wanted to go mess with Germany. Well, you had Austro-Hungarian Empire and Italy coming to their defense. If you had, say you had France decide that it wanted to go pick a fight with Italy. Well, you had Italy's neighbor to the north, Austria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They in Germany would step in and say, no. So it was a win-win-win for all three of these nations to have, and when you think about it, when you're looking at it geographically, right, that's the center of Europe, right, all carved up into one nice little, stretch of land where they're all unified together, right? Because when you look at Europe, it's, in Central Europe, it's Germany on top, Austria, Switzerland is kind of over off to the side, to the lower left, if I remember right, because I think it borders, Switzerland borders Germany, France, and Italy, I think. Or no, not Italy, Austria, right? So Switzerland is kind of over here, but Austria's right here, and then Hungary is kind of like right behind it, but under them is Italy. So you have the whole center section of Europe who is basically rallied together, formed an alliance in the event that anybody else tries to pick a fight with any one of them. You got to also remember that Germany has just real recently there, I think it was 1881 actually, that Germany unified as a nation. So Germany was a very young nation at the time, and I think what they were doing is they were reaching out to their neighbors for intercontinental support, as it were. So and this alliance would hold true until Italy joins in the war in World War I. That whole debacle would kind of like disrupt their unity. If I remember right, I think the Italians had sided with the Allies during World War I, and so that would have strained relations that they had with Germany. I can't remember on that one, but you go back to World War II, and they were back at it again, being friends, right? Hitler liked how Mussolini ran his country. He respected the heck out of Mussolini for how he ran his country with an iron fist, and befriended him. In fact, there was at one point Mussolini was close to being captured, and Hitler sent his troops in there to rescue Mussolini. Unfortunately, that didn't work out so well for him the second time around because, as we all know, if you know anything about history, Mussolini and his wife or mistress or whatever she was, they were rounded up by Pisans. They were tortured, executed, and then they hung their bodies in the public square for all to see. People would throw rocks at their hanging corpses. They would, spit on them. They'd mutilate them. They'd do whatever. I mean, it was in their view, it was a just end to an unjust leader. That rabbit trailing off the Triple Alliance, but that Triple Alliance was established in 1882. In 1902, Cuba gains its independence from the United States. Now, what's interesting about that is that we were at war with Spain from 1898 to 1902, right? During that conflict, we had wrestled Cuba, Guam, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico from Spain. Like, we took them over. And, but for whatever reason because the war ended in 1902, and it's on this day in 1902 that we basically hand the keys back to Cuba and say, this is your country. We did so with the caveat, I think, that we wanted to be on friendly terms with the Cubans. Years later, the mafia would enjoy having like holdings there in Havana, and they would go there for vacations and whatnot. And it was in the early 50s, that Batista, who we favored to be in charge of Cuba because he was friendly to the United States, he was ousted, and then Fidel Castro took over, and then really kind of turned the country into a pro-communist regime. And we all know what happened there with Bay of Pigs, Cuban Missile Crisis, blah 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 blah. But the mafia lost all its holdings, lost its ability to have a nice vacation spot when Batista was ousted and Fidel Castro took over. So Castro was no friend to the mafia. I'm surprised they didn't send hitmen out there to go take him out, because it would have served them well. But who knows? I don't know. At any rate, so Cuba gets its independence. We don't keep it as a territory for very long. In fact, we still have Guam as a territory. We have the U.S. Virgin Islands as a territory. Puerto Rico, while it is its own nation, it's still kind of technically one of our territories. The Philippines is really no longer one of our territories, but we have bases there, but we don't have extradition with them either. So it's one of those things where you could commit a crime here, run to the Philippines, and the U.S. can't touch you because there's no extradition there. Now, mind you, if someone were to be due diligent enough to go, I don't know, maybe acquire you after a fashion and then drop you off at, like, I don't know, say an embassy or one of the Marine bases there, then at that point you'd be on U.S. territory, and they could, from there they could haul your butt back to the United States to stand prosecution. But whatever. So in 2002, we're skipping ahead because not a whole lot happened between. Well, there was, but I'm saving that one for later. Well, wait, that came before 1902. Never mind. So, in 2002, East Timor officially gains its independence. It's some small country, and I know I've heard of it. It's escaping me where exactly in the world it is, but they officially gain their independence. They become their own independent state on this day in 2002. So they've been an independent nation for 22 years. In 2015, late night talk show host David Letterman steps down. He'd been doing that for a while, and then he stepped down, and I'm not really sure why, because he does other stuff now, but he had a good gig going since the 80s, and he stepped down and made way for other folks to come in. It was kind of the passing of the torch, really. It's like when you think of these late night talk show hosts, you had Johnny Carson, you had Jay Leno, and you had David Letterman, and they were like Leno took over for Carson, if I remember right, and then much later you had the likes of like Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, then Conan O'Brien, and like, so I mean, these guys were, Letterman was one of the pioneers of the 80s, I think. I mean, obviously Carson was the pioneer, but Letterman steps down on this day in 2015. And so the one highlighted feature of this day that I wanted to get to, because I thought it was really interesting, is in 1862, President Lincoln, he signs the Homestead Act. And what the Homestead Act was that there was, it was granting 160 acres of free land to anyone who could homestead, cultivate, work, live off of, said land for 5 years or more. If they could homestead this land for 5 years or better, then the signed act said that they basically got to, have that land for free. They didn't have to pay anybody for the land. It was granted to them by congressional act. The only thing that they would be required to pay for going forward would be like the land taxes, which I don't know if land taxes were a thing back then like they are now, but it was, the Homestead Act was a real good way of acquiring land so that you could work a farm, work a ranch, do something that cultivates that land. But the caveat there was that you had to homestead it for at least 5 years or more to qualify to have it for free. So that is it. That is this day in history. This has been May 20th. Tomorrow we'll do it again for May 21st. I have a cousin and a niece who has a birthday tomorrow, so I'll be giving them a shout out then. So, as always, have a blessed day. Take care. I mean, today it's a cloudy but sunny day, so hopefully you have good weather and good fortune your way. So be blessed. Take care. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. All right. Have a good one. Bye.